We used to call her General MacArthur in the household because my father was in and out of jail. Who's taking care of these kids? There's altogether at the time 5 of us. My mother did the cooking. When my father was in jail after the Frankie Kid Bruno shooting, that was back in 1941, and he didn't get out until 1945. So now my mother, I saw her, we lived in the back room of a grocery store. We lived in the back room of a knitting mill. My mother took care of us, and she was doing what they call in those days during the Second World War, piecework. She would make dresses, she was sewing in a sewing machine, and she couldn't go to the factory, so they send the work to her because she had to take care of us. She couldn't afford a babysitter. And at the time, I'm 6 years old till I'm 10 years old. When I started going to grammar school, we didn't start till late, maybe 7, 8 years old. That's why when I graduated from high school, I was 20 years old. I wasn't 18 years old because I started school late in life. And I saw her. And when my father came back out of jail, it took him about a year to come back to her. And now that's when he was reorganizing his mind after he did time in Sing Sing. And he met all the big boys there. When you do time, you get worse. In other words, you meet the big boys in there, and you do favors for them. And he was the tough guy. He helped Fat Tony Salerno. He helped Joe Adonis. He helped quite a few of those bosses when they were in jail. They weren't bosses at the time, but they were potential bosses. They remembered Jimmy Nap defending him against the different nationalities and the different groups in Sing Sing. He was a tough guy. He was a tough guy then. Then later on, he became a sensible man and a well-knowledgeable and scholastic type guy. He was self-taught. So I have to say that he reorganized, and he became, before he became a made man at 65 years old, he became a capo. Before that, he was the advisor to all 5 families, because to be the advisor to all 5 families is not a consigliere. A consigliere is the advisor for one of each for the family you're the consigliere for. My father was voted by the heads of the family and by the commission to be the consigliere for all 5 families, investing their money in Cuba and in Vegas and in Reno, Nevada, and the Bahama Islands in legalized gambling casinos. And he chose me to learn and go to gambling school to learn how to, about how to set up a casino-type operation, how to hide the money, how to skim off the top for the boys, not for myself. But I did it for myself, too.
Well, I know that your father, it's obvious, your father was a big influence on you as a young adult through your adult life. I think it's safe to say that your mother was a big influence on you as a child.
My mother and my father, through life, people would say they look more like brother and sister. When he came back to her after he got out of Sing Sing, he had $15,000 in cash. Where he got it from, I don't know. But now I'm 10 years old. And he told my mother, he said, listen, we were on 42nd Street, Flatbush Avenue, in a 2-family house, I'll never forget. And my mother was paying the rent because none of those guys came to help her because he didn't have a crew then. He was a young Jimmy Nap then. My mother paid the rent. My mother accepted him back, and it was snowing out, and me and my brothers and sister had to stay outside on the front porch of the house. So my father was inside with my mother. They're making amends. He was making amends. Well, anyway, my father gave my mother 15 grand after he gets out of Sing Sing, and she buys a house on Metropolitan Avenue in Ridgewood, a 2-family house, and we all settled there since I was 10 years old, and that's the same place it was in 1990 was sold by my younger brother because he inherited everything on that house. But my mother had her crew. Her crew was her children. Well, my father went out and took care of his crew from 11 in the morning until 4 in the morning. And that would be, he was promoting gambling, the Ziganet games, that's an Italian card game, gin rummy, craps in Harlem on 2nd Avenue, 114th Street, with Fat Tony Salerno at the Palm Boys Social Club. It was a front that candy store, and in the back, on that crap table, when they weren't shooting craps, they were cutting up money from Las Vegas, Nevada, because in that dirty store, in that all dust was built Las Vegas, Nevada, because my father was told to keep an eye on Meyer Lansky. That was his position, to keep an eye on him when they went to Cuba, and they had Frank Sinatra carrying the attaché with the money in, $1 million, to give to Batista, who allowed them to open up gambling casinos. So my father had to challenge Lansky, who was a very close friend of Batista. So my father didn't trust Meyer Lansky till the day he died. My father said, I don't trust this Jew. He said, I deal with the Jewish people in partnerships and whatnot in the number business, but this Jew, I don't trust him. He's with too many politicians all over the world. And he has a hold on them somehow, some way. And all Meyer Lansky ever was Murder Incorporated, never an intelligent man, just bulldozed people, and he was only 4'11".
If you like the Tony Nap interviews, you will have to read his book, My Father, My Don. There is much more information than what was in the interview, and I am sure, like me, you won't want to put the book down. So to find out how to purchase this amazing true story, just go to Tony's website at www.myfathermydon.com. Well, you think you enjoyed segment 2? Wait until you see segment 3, where Tony talks about Frank Sinatra and his situation in Sin City, Las Vegas.
Whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, whether I find a place in this world or never belong, I gotta be me. I gotta be.
Well, you know, it's amazing how you're very direct, you speak the truth, you don't hold much back. And you mentioned Frank Sinatra's name, so I think we should talk about the dealings that you had with Frank Sinatra and some of the things that happened in Las Vegas when he refused to pay a $50,000 gambling debt.
Right. Well, what happened was this. He didn't refuse to pay the $50,000 marker. He wanted the $50,000 marker like he usually gets when he works the Sands, and this was opening night. And Pat Henry was his comedian. And they were at the crap table with Sammy Davis Jr., Eddie Fisher, Victor Moan, me. And I'm a casino boss at the time. And Carl Cohn's the casino boss himself. He's the head, the #1 casino boss. He represented the Cleveland mob, where Meyer Lansky later on was affiliated with. And so Carl Cohn, a Jewish guy, tough though, when Sinatra said to me, I want, hey, Tony Nap, where's my $50,000 marker before I do the show tonight? I want to gamble. And I said, Howard Hughes takes over at midnight tonight. Carl Cohn's the casino manager with the Cleveland mob. I said, he sold the Sands to Howard Hughes' man, Bobby Mayhew. And you never saw Howard Hughes. He was at the Desert Inn down the road in the whole top floor with private security. So he sent Mayhew to buy the place, and Mayhew was there and said, no markers, no credit cards, no handshake loans, till we check everything out with the bookkeeping. They had to settle up with all the debts and the chips. So if you have $1 million in chips, you better have $1 million in cash in case everybody cashes their chips. That was the gaming law then. So now, Carl Cohn told Frank Sinatra that Sinatra was drinking. He had Jilly Rizzo there, who at one time was a controller in a number business for my father, and I winked at Jilly, stay out of this. This is serious stuff. When I do my wink, they know what I mean. So Frank Sinatra went with Carl Cohn to Carl Cohn's suite on the 3rd floor at the Sands, which we called the Tower, and Carl Cohn beat the hell out of him because Frank Sinatra abused that casino manager in front of everybody and in front of the employees, and that's a no-no. So Sinatra called him everything in the book. Sinatra's favorite word was bum. You're a bum. He called her, if he didn't like you, he'd call you a bum. And if he loved you, he'd call you a bum. He called some of the broads bums, too, but he meant in a lovable way. One of the casino guys comes over to me, whispers in my ear at the table. I go up there and I explain to Frankie. I said, Frankie, you don't fool around with these guys. This is not from here to eternity. This is serious business. You're lucky you're alive. I said, and your guys, they're not going to do anything here. I said, I'm going to be on your side. I said, I'm going to support you. You're going to get to the doctor because your mouth's bleeding and whatnot. I said, but you can't get the damn marker because we don't own the place anymore. I said, but if I had it in the cage under my name, I give you the freaking $50,000 under my name. He said, well, why don't you do that? I said, because my father said not to give you a dime, that you're a nickel and dime entertainer, and I'm your employer, and I pay you $250,000 a week to hire you to work here in the showroom with Pat Henry. That's why. And Count Basie was your backup. All those people get paid. I signed their checks. So now, shut up, and now we're going to be friends. I'm going to take you, I'll have Jilly Rizzo come up and take you to the dentist, take care of you. He needed oral surgery. For 3 days, I partied with him because I was an alcoholic. I drank, the broads, everything. We used every time he worked for you, he had one floor of suites at that time for all his men that he called friends. I called them freeloaders. Most of them were ex-wrestlers, fighters, football players, about 9 or 10, because he wanted to pay them on his payroll rather than pay the governments, so the taxes. So whatever taxes he was going to pay, he made it payroll taxes for these guys to survive and do something. So I had a ball. I get a phone call from New York. My secretary in my office at the Sands says, your father on the phone. Oh, Jesus Christ. So I said, all right, what is it? Get in the next limousine. It's in front of the place. I already called the bellhop. And get in that limousine and get to the airport and fly back here to New York. Who the hell are you to defend that nickel and dime entertainer against the big boys? Well, I said, okay, Dad. So I go in the limousine. Who's in there? Eddie Fisher and Victor Moan. Both of them owe $25,000 each to the casino. I said, we're going to beat Howard Hughes. You don't have to pay them. Don't worry about it. Because Howard Hughes owns it. They don't want to give you money. And Bobby Mayu, who is representing Howard Hughes, he's not going to get paid either from anybody I okayed. So he said, but how about your father? I said, my father's waiting, and he's going to make a deal, and you don't have to worry about paying that money. Victor Moan, a sensitive man. Eddie Fisher, drinking in the limousine. It was a stretch job limousine. We got to the airport. We missed the plane because we were in the stretch job limousine drinking. And we had a couple of broads with us, too. Well, anyway, we had a ball. So the driver of the limousine was with the house. It was Caesar. Matter of fact, it was from the Sands, yes. And we all flew back to New York. I got balled out. I went to Fat Tony Salerno, and what happened was Fat Tony said, use more diplomacy. Don't defend half-ass entertainers against the big boys. We employ them. We don't need them in the casinos. We do it for hospitality and give the gamblers something to look forward to. But we have crap tables. We have blackjack tables. We have baccarat tables. We have slot machines. We don't need an entertainer. We add that into the package deal. Those people would still come there and gamble because we give them compliments of the house. They don't care about a Sinatra. It just helps at times. So he said, from now on, you listen to me, Fat Tony Salerno told me. Anything happens with your father, and if I outlive him, you come and see me. And that's what I did later on in life. That's why he put me on the honor roll.
If you like the Tony Nap interviews, you will have to read his book, My Father, My Don. There is much more information than what was in the interview, and I am sure, like me, you won't want to put the book down. So to find out how to purchase this amazing true story, just go to Tony's website at www.myfathermydon.com. Segment 4, Tony talks about the famous women he hung out with, like Natalie Wood, Debbie Reynolds, Shelley Winters, and much more. So tune into the next segment of Celebrity Talk.
I gotta be me. Whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, whether I find a place in this world or never belong, I gotta be me. I gotta be me.
You mentioned, and we're gonna touch on your, because you mentioned very freely about your alcoholism, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, but I know around that same time you were also keeping company with a lot of beautiful Hollywood starlets.
Yeah.
And who were some of those?
Lauren Bacall, Natalie Woods was my favorite date. No, well, Shelley Winters came on later after she did Some Came Running with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. This is before that picture. And it was, Milton Berle was there, and there was some other young ladies there, and believe it or not, it was Jane Russell. There was also some of them were showgirls in Vegas before they became stars. Lucille Ball, and that's before the I Love Lucy show too. And my favorite date was Natalie Woods. She was just a sweetheart, and there was no sexual contact whatsoever. No, but that guy that she married, Wagner, he has the profile and the hair comb of a Napoli. You see, there was a little bit of a relation, look familiar. Okay. So she married him twice. She divorced and then married him again, and then, of course, she was with him the night she died when she left the ship there, because they claimed she was dating the bartender on shore when she took the buoy, whatever it was, and they claimed she was drinking. But that girl was a sweetheart of a girl. Then there, of course, was Debbie Reynolds. Because of Eddie Fisher, I went to their wedding at Grossinger's when Eddie Fisher married Debbie Reynolds. It was Eddie Fisher's family that owned, he was related to the people who owned Grossinger's, where it was a fighting camp, boxing camp for boxers to train. And like Marciano was his favorite training spot. And then there was a young girl, but she never got too far. I don't know what happened to her. Her name was Mickey Taylor. She was a rockette. And then there was my favorite, who was in the picture in the book, Choo Choo Collins, who was a singer with Trini Lopez. And she was a head singer for Trini Lopez. And then she wound up with Cugat later on. And Xavier Cugat, yes. And then Xavier Cugat used to want me to display his paintings in the lobby of Caesar's Palace, and he put price tags on the paintings. Of course, he was a painter, and I said, Coogie, what the hell you want to do, put a price tag on your paintings for? Auction them off to people, and this way we have an auction here. And he said, I didn't think of that. And I said the same, and then Coogie, I call him Coogie. Coogie said the same thing to me. Whenever Sinatra worked at the Circus Maximum Theater, because after the Sands, we all made amends with each other. And a few years later, in 1965, we wound up at Caesar's Palace because it was mob money, Jimmy Hoffa with Teamster money that helped build Caesar's Palace. So we all moved there, and Sinatra made amends, everybody made amends. So by going there, Sinatra always called who he wanted in the lounge. You had the B.S. Pulley, a comedian who was struggling to put his stepson through doctor school. Tony Nap put him to work in the lounge, give him $300 a week at that time. And then there was Cugat, who Sinatra said, put him in the after B.S. Pulley finishes, put Cugat in there. So, and then Belle Bart, and she was the filthiest female comedian I ever heard tell the joke. She didn't tell jokes. She used to go lift up a dress. She had panties on to the audience, and to the woman and say, "What? Watch the birdie, watch the birdie. What do you think? You're coming to a PTA meeting?" And everybody laughed. That's what she used to do, Bill Bott. And then Ned Sullivan came in there and sat in the back of the lounge show, and Bill Bott went over to him after the show and said, "When am I going on your show?" And Ed Sullivan said, "I have a family show, you know." So she looked at me, and I'm walking around the floor, and when you're Italian in those days and you're a boss, you stay behind the scenes. But my father wanted me in front to show the Jewish mob that we have Italians with knowledge too. So by staying on the floor, Bill Bott, I would walk around, she used to say, "You look like a Jewish Rock Hudson," as she used to call me. Later on in life, I went to Vegas because of the book signing, and there was a showgirl there that I dated. She's in her late 60s, and and in the audience there was about 120 of them in the senior citizen development, and she stood up and she said, "Hey, you Jewish Rock Hudson." That wasn't Belle Bart, but it was one of the chorus girls that used to call me a Jewish Rock Hudson. I'm Italian, but they wanted to make it look like I was Jewish while I'm walking the floor, because only Jewish guys could go out to the front. The Italian money's behind the scenes. And those are some of the girls I dated, yes. And then, of course, Choo Choo Collins, she became an actress, too. I don't know if she's alive today. But she had a manager that was a female, too. She's in that picture, too. And I have to do all apologies to my wife. This is before I married her.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, we'll be right back, and we're going to continue this story. If you like the Tony Nap interviews, you will have to read his book, My Father, My Don. There is much more information than what was in the interview, and I am sure, like me, you won't want to put the book down. So to find out how to purchase this amazing true story, just go to Tony's website at www.myfathermydon.com. You won't want to miss segment 5, where Tony talks about heavyweight boxing champ Rocky Marciano and the great opera singer Mario Lanza. This will be information most of you never heard before, so stay tuned.
Whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, whether I find a place in this world or never belong, I gotta be me, I gotta be me. What else can I be but what I am?
Off camera, we talked about Rocky Marciano, and but one of the things I want to bring up is your knowledge of Mario Lanza, the great tenor. And I guess one of the questions I want to ask, was he ever backed by the mob?
There are hearsay stories, and then there are direct stories. My story comes from Rocky Marciano himself about his relationship with Mario Lanza. When he went to Italy to see Mario Lanza was trying to lose weight, and he couldn't lose it, and there were doctors, which were later on found out to be quacks, injecting him with woman's urine that would get in the bloodstream, and that would help to burn up the calories. And that would be urine from pregnant women, and their urine was injected into Mario Lanza. Rocky Marciano sits with me at Crisci's restaurant. He's trying to make a comeback, and he wants me to talk to my father, that he wants to meet with him and sit at his table with him. But before that, let me go into the details now of Marciano's story about Mario Lanza, what happened, what he thinks happened. This is not what I think happened. this here, you could call it hearsay if you want, but most of my story is practical experience, not out of an encyclopedia. So now, I know in a court of law they say, well, hearsay evidence is not acceptable. We're not in a court of law. We're here in the streets. We're practical people that I gathered all my information from. Old-timers that were involved in the business as well, in the number business, in the gambling business. Rocky tells me this. He says he went to Italy to see Mario. That's where it was when this happened, when he accordingly died of an enlarged heart. That there was a mob boss in Italy. I can't recall his name. That Mario Lanza refused to entertain at one of the opera houses in Italy because let's remember one thing. Mario Lanza was not an opera house singer. He was a motion picture singer. He was a former truck driver from Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, whatever. And he was not an opera singer in an opera house. He needed a microphone. And not only that, he couldn't remember his lines anyway. They used to do a lot of cue card reading when he was doing his motion picture acting, but he had to keep his weight down. Opera singers don't have to worry about keeping their weight down when they're live on stage.